So in this video, we're going to look at a couple of different ways of making pyramidal forms or conic forms. So the first one we're going to start out with is going to be an octagon that goes into a pyramid form. So there's a couple of different ways to do this. There's obviously a manual way to actually construct this pyramid, but there's an easier way. So if we go over into our menu over here and we click down on this little guy, we're going to see polygon, center, radius. You can do circumscribe polygon and you can do polygon by edge. So there's a couple of different ways to do this, but we're just going to click on polygon here. We're going to just work on just constructing that octagon first, and then we'll work on how to make it into a pyramid. So you can see pops up number of sides, so we can go anywhere from 3 up to as many sides as we want here. So we're going to type in 8 here, and then we'll make an octagon this way. So this is going to automatically make an octagon that has even sides. If you don't want it to have even sides, you would probably have to go through a more manual process of doing this. So the first command that we're going to go over is going to be extrude to point. So normally when we do an extrusion, we would click on our curve and we would extrude it, and it would turn into just an extruded form of the actual curve that we made. But there's a command called extrude to point. So what we're going to need to do here is add a point. So we're going to add a single point. We're going to make sure our center snap is on, and we're just going to add it at the center of that octagon. And then we'll go ahead and we'll drag that up into space. We'll just make that into the height of our octagon. Obviously, if you wanted this to be at a particular height, you could click this once and you can type in an actual height for that. So if we drag that up, now we can do the command extrude. So if we don't hit enter here and we look at our options, we're going to do extrude curve to point. It's going to ask us for the curves that we want to extrude, so that's going to be that one. The point that we want to extrude to. So you can see here now I have basically a tether on the end of this pyramid. So I'm going to click that point, and then you can see if we turn our shaded viewport on, we've created a pyramid that goes all the way up to that point. So again, we can use cap here, and that would make that a solid form. So if we didn't want to do it that way, if we didn't want it to come to a total point, one thing that we could do is we could go back into our extrude commands and we could look at extrude curve tapered. So if we look at extrude curve tapered, it's going to ask us direction and then draft angle. So you can see if we change our draft angle, it's going to actually change. So the command for that is going to be R. So if we change that to 30 degrees, we're going to taper more in. If we change it to 5 degrees, we're only slightly going to taper. So if you know the angle that you actually want to taper that shape in at, you can go ahead and do it with a tapered extrusion. So the next one we're going to look at is if we want to make a conic form. So again, if we just had a circle and we wanted to put a point in the middle of that, we can do extrude curve to point. Oops. Extrude curve to point, we can go ahead and click that and we can extrude to that point. That would make us a simple cone. There also is a cone tool, but we're not going to go over that in this tutorial. So the other one that you could do, so if we did a copy here and we did a vertical, and then if we were to scale this a little bit, so let's go from the center and we're just going to make this smaller. So what we could do here is we could do a loft. So select curves that we want to loft. We're going to click that one and make sure that our seam is aligned, and then we can go ahead and do the loft. So that would be one way of making a conic form there. Another would be a sweep 1 or a sweep 2. So these are going to work very similar to each other here. So if we go just from add basically a ruling line around that, we could do a revolve here. So we could revolve from there, and we could go, whoops, not that direction. So the revolve axis is going to start at the center, and it's also going to go to the center down here. And then if we start there, you can see we can do a revolve. So the revolution angle here would be 360. So a revolve would also work here if we have this curve. And then let's go into the sweep commands quickly. There's a tutorial that covers more about what the sweep commands do. But so here we're going to click the rail that we want to use, and then the cross section curves would be both of those. We're going to have to adjust our seam here, and we're going to have to flip that. And then that would go ahead and do a sweep 1. And then what a sweep 2 would look like would be basically the opposite here. So we're going to select these as our rails, and then we're going to select this as our cross section. and then a sweep 2 would also work. So you see we basically have 4 different ways of making the same form here. Some of these will also work for a more faceted form, but I would go with the original methods of extrude to point or extrude tapered if you would like to create something with a more polygonal form as opposed to a circular form.